minute.
So, Mr. Bhalla, will you be starting now?
I think he is having a bandwidth issue, maybe.
So perhaps TK, you could start with your welcome address in that case.
Right, yeah, we can. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy to be in the midst of friends like Anil and Avinash ji, parent body to which all of us belong. It's always happy to be back. And it's indeed a great pleasure that the North India regional chapter of ICAI and Delhi chapter of IAA is together this program, cybersecurity audit. We wish to see more of this joint programs which is being offered all over the country, and cybersecurity audit is an issue which is very, very important. Most of us don't grasp that very well, and though the younger chartered accountants are reasonably well trained, old people like me still grasp with it, however we try. And this is always going to be an important topic, and the hackers and the criminals are always ahead. At enterprise level, we are always scared whether anything is going to hit us. Now, every day you see one data leakage, one fraud or the other, any big names, corporate names being touted, not only reputational risk, it can be a huge financial risk as well. Very important that we in the internal audit profession as well as in statutory audit profession understand this area very well and make sure that our enterprises are run very well, free of these risks or as much minimal risk as possible. In that context, I think this topic is very well programmed, and I congratulate Sid and Amit and Avinash ji for putting this together. And coming back to our relationship with IIA, and I'm happy to see this even progressing well. We are not adversaries, we are partners actually, we are collaborators, and together we can certainly work together to improve governance standards. I always think this relationship like all doctors become members of Indian Medical Council. Some of them go on to specialize in cardiologists, gynecologists, and other fields. And IIA and CIA is like CIA going on to specialize in internal audit. I think that's a way to see it as. And in this connection only, we really offered the challenge exam to the ICAI members. It's not only for ICAI members, but to 17 accredited global accountancy bodies who can take the challenge exam, which is no three-part exam. It's only a one paper, 150 questions, which members can take and easily become CAAs and add on to that certification, which is like, a doctor becoming a surgeon or a MD, right? So it's becoming you are becoming a specialist audit. That's about it. And we would like to see this collaboration progressing further and be jointly working together as we go forward in the coming years. I'm sure Anil is a great friend of internal audit profession. He has been the president of the internal audit India for many years ago, and has been an active supporter, collaborator for our programs and events. We would really wish to see our partnership blossoming very well in the coming years. With these few words, I welcome all of you and comment this event, a program, a great success. Thank you, Anil. You are well known. I hardly need
pleasure is mine. TK, thank you.
Expert in this space, well recognized in India and abroad. We always eagerly look forward to listen to you on what is the latest you are going to say. And welcome once again.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's it from me, Sid. Take it over from there. Sid, are you able to hear us?
Sid, can you speak? If not, Amit could introduce.
Yeah. If I hope I'm
Yes, we
audible
can.
now.
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you now. Please carry on.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, Sid, you are.
Okay, I'll just. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is your host for the evening, Siddheshwar Bhalla, President, IA Delhi Chapter and Secretary, IA India. Good afternoon and warm welcome to all at this special webinar as we together celebrate the International Internal Audit Awareness Month, which is the month of May. I wish and pray for your safety as we combat the second wave of this endemic caused by COVID. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today distinguished speakers who will enrich us as they share their versatile and vast experience in the internal audit profession. We're extremely thankful to CA Anil Bhandari ji, who graciously agreed to be the chief guest for this occasion. Anil ji is a seasoned professional and leads a successful practice. He's contributing to our profession by wearing multiple hats, including Central Council member of ICI and Vice Chairman, Internal Audit Standards Board of ICI. Anilji, can I request you to please take the dais and share with us your perspectives on cybersecurity
Thank you,
and in fact
Siddheshwar.
your
Thank you.
personal experience that you have. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible to everybody.
Yes,
Fantastic. So, thank you so much. IA India, IA Delhi chapter, and of course our host in Delhi and IRC as well, and my colleague in Delhi, Avinash Gupta ji, and of course old friend TK, Nikhil, and Siddheshwar. I think we've been part of this journey for a long time, and internal audit is something which is at the core of my heart. So that's very exciting always to come back to the same platform, and. I don't know. You've invited me as a chief guest. I'm part of the family here. I'm actually past president, and I still continue to have my name on the India trusteeship. So I think I'm as much a host as all of you are. But nevertheless, thank you so much for having invited me here to probably share my thoughts around cybersecurity. And of course, a very warm welcome to Yukti. I'm sure she's the one who's going to actually take us through the cybersecurity and the challenges and the threats that all of us are likely to face in the future. But having said that, and since you've invited me, and since Nikhil has actually asked me, I was trying to ask Nikhil how much time do we have so that I could probably make my mind up. So he said very jokingly that somebody who needs to speak for 2 minutes would have to prepare for 2 days, and somebody who needs to speak for 2 hours does not have to prepare. So I'm actually unprepared, and I might landing speaking a little more and talking a little more. So my apologies for that. Please hold me back. Coming to the point of TK, where I think he said that we're all the old guys and you guys kind of understand cybersecurity. I must tell you, TK, that you're the safest in cybersecurity, and you should be happy about it, because not understanding too much actually helps you from being cyber secure. Once again, having said this, I think the only thing that I would want to probably encourage or suggest or talk to our friends today in and around the IA and the internal audit fraternity is, I think, one has to always keep looking back at how is business evolving, because I've always said this on every platform that I've spoken. At the end of the day, the outcome is very important. So all of us, whether it's cybersecurity, internal audit, controls, frameworks, we're talking about risk. I think everybody has to look at how is business evolving. And for me, if I were to look at cybersecurity, I would probably look at the business being evolved as point of sale business in the past. We used to have point of sale business. You need to have branches in the past if you were to look at banks, or if you have to look at any other business for that matter. We kind of got it all together and kind of centralized it and said, why don't we get it online? Invested a lot of money around all of the technology pieces. And today, we've actually improvised it. And we said, not even online or centralized. We don't want it. We don't mind if it's distributed. But, you have a lot of investments happening in digital assets, which means today the bank that you see, a large bank you see, will probably be broken up into multiple banks in the future. And you may not even see what you see today in the way and the Cs and the Shipe that you see today. So we are in the era of digital investment. And if one were to look at World Economic Forum report, which I think I did mention in one of the last IA programs, you would realize that almost 60% of the investment on the digital asset goes towards contributing the growth of the organization. 20% goes towards creating experience, and another 20% of the digital investment would go towards making sure that your processes are better and you're trying to bring down the operational costs and so on and so forth. So if almost 50% or 60% goes towards an investment of enhancing your business, growing your business. And if that is the kind of investment people are making in digital assets, then that is something that as internal auditors, we should definitely lose our sleep on and be worried, A. And as cybersecurity professionals, I think it is really time for us to get up and probably redefine ourselves and maybe even relook at a lot of things that we're trying to do. And in a minute or two, I'll come to what I'm trying to kind of put across to all of us here today. So while the businesses have changed, the threat models have also changed, and I'm sure Yuki would probably deep dive on this. But today, what you have is targeted intrusion, right? It's no longer those days where a cyber attacker comes and tries to deface a website. It is to do with targeted intrusion. It is to do with harvesting customer data and information. And I think that has become more valuable than even money today that you have balances in your bank account. And the third one, I think, which is very, very critical, which continues for a long time, is the insider threat. Now, how important is insider threat? I'm not sure, but if you look at history, you will realize that all the large economies or countries, I would say, have actually fallen down because of people within the organization or country trying to, go and destroy that. So if you look at Romans, if you look at anybody in the past, even Britishers, for example, you will see that there are insiders who are actually cracking it up. If you look at organizations, that is the same story, whether you want to look at it 10 years back or even today. Insider threat continues to be a very, very strong proposition of what is likely to go wrong within an organization, even from a technology perspective. And now, if I were to open up a third dimension about who are these guys in today's world who are actually trying to attack you, and you'll be surprised, and I'm sure many of us would probably know here, that it is no longer people with some technology skills. It is actually people with a lot of money who are trying to hit you. And these are nations, these are states, and again, these are organized crime. They come with all the kind of money that one would expect, and they really hit you very, very hard in terms of a cyber attack or trying to take away that password from you or trying to do a ransom attack on you and so on and so forth. And what are the kind of technologies which are emerging? You have malwares, bots, phishing attacks, spam, ransomware, and you can continue to talk about it throughout the day in terms of ways and means that these organized crimes or nations or state or cyber attackers are using today. So I wanted to kind of just give you a background, but the message that I want to pass on is it is no longer a simplistic cyber attack that one is looking at. It is actually targeted attacks that one is looking at. And it is no longer machines or computers that one is trying to save. It is actually data that one is trying to save. And incidentally, from privacy to anything to do with cybersecurity, you will soon come to hear, or I'm sure most of us here probably would be aware, that the security that we talk about today is likely to become contextual. So it's going to be contextual data security. What I mean is the information that I have about Nikhil, for example, his telephone number, his email ID, or whatever, I have it in certain context. And the information that he has it in certain context. So I could have the same information that Nikhil has, and Nikhil have the same information that I have, but the way that we need to protect that information would be completely different because the context in which we have would be different. And this would lead us to amazing amount of innovation happening in the cybersecurity world. Whether we talk about tools and technologies, all of this has to be driven towards artificial intelligence, machine learning. I know AI and ML has been abused to a large extent, but the fact still remains that because there is humongous amount of data that we are generating, and the tools and models on top of that would help us to actually predict and then protect and then prevent whatever is likely to come. So I think one must look at and start visualizing how important the data is within an organization. So if we have all internal auditors here today, my two-liner suggestion would be make sure that you understand the business, make sure that you understand the data, and the data could be flowing around different aspects of an organization. It could be front office, it could be middle office, it could be back office. Every organization can be broken up into maybe these 3 or 4 compartments. All of these boxes that you see, you would need to really understand the importance of the data and what you're trying to protect, because you don't have unlimited resources, you have limited resources. So you would need to focus your resources on these elements, which become very, very important. The second is identities continue to play a very, very important role. And And one thing that I do currently, I champion the cause of identities, and I've been doing it for a couple of years now. And interestingly, it's no longer human and interactive identities. Please understand, identities could be passports, for example. It could be driving licenses, for example. And today, the identities are very similar to a mobile phone that you're carrying. So your mobile phones have started to mirror the identities that you have, interestingly. Can you imagine that? Your mobile phones actually have started to mirror your identities because the mobile phone knows exactly what you're doing. You use mobile phone most of the time for accesses. You use mobile phone for OTPs. So literally your identity is now taken over and your identity is now in the digital world, and it is all across the world as we speak today. It is all across the place. Probably would not even realize where our identities are. So I think identities are becoming a gateway, and I think one would look at identities going forward, and one should look at within our organizations as well. You have machine identities coming up in billions. You have privileged identities, which are so important because we don't even guard the guards. And that is an area which I also try and specialize around, because privileged IDs are those IDs which are elevated IDs, and they could just about do anything on the tools and technology. So what we believe that we are seeing our emails? No, there's somebody else in the organization who also has the ability to see our emails. There's somebody else in the organization who's able to also see the Word document that you're writing. And there's somebody else in the organization who could also see the data that you have. And it's a huge technology team that you have somewhere could also look at all of that, and you would need to control all of that as well. And finally, you have high velocity vaults coming up in the cloud, because as we speak in the cloud, and for example, this is one example that we have. We're all on a video conferencing software or a webinar software, and there is a demand of these webinar softwares which go up and go down. Right, 2 o'clock maybe on a Saturday afternoon, a lot of people might be doing a webinar, and this demand really goes up. What really happens in the background is there's a huge scale of infrastructure which actually comes up, and there are a lot of servers which are actually going up. And suddenly when the demand falls down, the servers go down. So this is becoming high velocity and scalable model in the cloud, which is also something that you would need to protect. Very, very important that we would need to protect. I think finally, I would want to end this by saying that while you look at businesses from a cybersecurity perspective, also look at businesses, how they are changing themselves, and where do you focus at. So for example, banks are likely to become API banking. And if they're likely to become API banking, can you imagine as internal auditors, we were always worried that our invoicing system should never go online. We were always worried that the rates that we have and that we acquire our products should never be available to people offline. As a financial system in technology, those systems should never be accessed offline. And a customer balance, you should not be able to see it sitting at home, in spite of the fact that you may be an employee of the organization. But unfortunately, today, what is happening is every piece of data technology that you have within an organization is completely sitting outside the organization, because people are accessing it from anywhere. And the other piece is, while people are accessing it, there are APIs and technology companies who are actually talking to these elements, and the gates have been opened up of a core banking solution, of your core ERP solution. These gates have been literally opened up. So I think as internal auditors, we would need to look at all of these aspects to understand where do you put up controls, how do you put up controls, and so on and so forth. So I think for internal auditors, I think we need to understand how do you audit tools now. For internal auditors, I think we need to understand how do you audit configurations now. For internal auditors, we need to understand how do you audit automation, for example. For internal auditors, you need to understand how does one write a bot and how does one audit a bot. So I think these are some key elements that I think all of us should remember as risk practitioners or internal auditors. So I think this is just the thought that I had in my mind. I thought would love to share this with you. I'm sure Yuki here would, take us through much more in terms of a deeper insights into, what is really happening around cyber attacks and what are the areas that one would look at and should look at. So thank you once again, IA India, for having invited me. Absolutely a pleasure to come at any point in time and talk to all our friends and colleagues here. And I think we have had a fantastic team in IA India, and I think we still continue to have a fantastic team, whether it is the North region or the East or the West region. I think this has been a fantastic journey with all you guys here. Thank you once again. Back to you, Sideshu.
Thanks, Anilji. You made us all spellbound by sharing perspective that has triggered thought process in our minds on how we should proactively address cyber threats. I believe this is being truly like an inspirational leader. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And so we are thankful to CA Avinash Gupta ji Chairman, Northern India Regional Council of ICI, who extended untiring support as we together celebrate the International Internal Audit Awareness Month. May I now request CA Avinash Gupta ji, Chairman NIRC of ICI, to share his experiential learnings with all the participants. Avinash ji, the stage is yours.
Am I audible? Yeah. So thank you, Siddeshwar ji. Respected CA Anil Bhandari ji, our Central Council member from the Institute, TK sir, Nikhil ji and Yukti ji, speaker of the day, Amit ji, and Suman Chatterjee also I can see, I think he have just gone. So today we are very happy that we have done our first joint program with IIA. This is a long dream of mine that Institute of Chartered Accountants should have these kinds of programs whereby we all learn, and knowledge there is no limitation of the institution. If any person is getting knowledge from anywhere, I believe he should get it. And you being into the specialized internal audit field, and TK sir have said very, very rightly that IMA and these super specialized degrees and institutions that we have, so we can say that mostly all the internal auditors are chartered accountants, member of ICI, and then you are super specializing into internal audit, so that's why you have created this IIA. So I believe that our members should get experience of this specialized subject of internal audit. And then more, when I see this cyber security, I just remember few days back there is a big news in the paper about the security breach that happened in Air India. Somebody in my profession, one of my colleagues is asking me that if somebody have hacked the data of these customers of Air India, how does it matter? Then we are discussing about this, that it is that today the business is data only. Every business is based on the data which is available to him, either A or B. So this securing this data in the system, and no big business today can do anything manually. It has to rely on systems, and the systems has to be so foolproof that this data should not go into the hands of people who may misuse this data. Earlier, because I belong from a taxation fraternity, we are only talking about data leakages and data stolen in HSBC, and these Black Money Act is coming on these HSBC leaks, Panama leaks, and all these leaks, because based on these leaked data, income tax department are generally pushing them hard in recovering the taxes. But now, even in the normal business, if the data is being leaked, then people are facing a lot of problems. Even in our cases, we can see that many times these credit card companies and other companies stolen our data from A or Y. The moment you buy a expensive product from any showroom, so next day you start receiving calls from them, you make a credit card, you take this, that. This is also a data leakage. So it is very important, I feel, that for the chartered accountants and other people who are into this internal audit profession, that today it is not about only vouching and seeing the papers, whether the bill is there or not during the auditing, but what is important is the data security. And what are the systems, what the company or the management have put to secure the precious data of their customers, of their employees. And nowadays, because of this pandemic, many people are working from home, and when it is a data about in a company, so they will put checks and balances on the entry and exit. But when they are working from home, so there is no threat to the cyber security, and that's, I believe that this program will help all of them to understand what are the key things as an internal auditor I should keep in mind, or I should check about the data security. So I'm happy that NIRC have joined IIA Delhi chapter for such program, and I assure you, sir, that in future, whenever you want us, whenever we want to do any joint program for enriching our members, for enriching the profession as such, so we are always available to you, and we will do more such programs in this tenure under the leadership of Anil Bhandari ji. So when I requested him, sir, you need to come and speak, so he just took 30 seconds to say yes. So he said for IIA and for internal audit, I'm always available. So I'm thankful to IIA and thankful to Anilji for coming there. And I'm really thankful to Sideshwarji. You also said yes in 1 minute time. Okay, let's do it. So we are always available in future. And I think this is very interesting subject. Let the speakers talk more in detail. What should we take in mind while doing this? So thank you for inviting us and making us a joint host for the program. Thank you, Sideshwarji. And thank you, IIA.
Thank you so much, Avinash-ji. I think we all owe to you for giving us this opportunity in the month of May, which is the International Internal Audit Awareness Month, for sharing the knowledge base to the larger and the wider professional fraternity that we have. And once again, many thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, shortly we will have Ms. Yukti Arora, co-founder Onmya Consulting Services, talk about cybersecurity audit. But before that, we will have some of the stalwarts of IIA India, including Mr. Deepak Wadhawan, member Global Advocacy Committee of IIA Inc., and also the ex-CEO of IIA India, Mr. Sumant Chadda, past President IIA India and Chairperson Advocacy Committee of IIA India, Mr. Amit Sharma, Chairperson Training Committee of IIA Delhi Chapter. But as next, I will just quickly introduce Mr. Nikhil Kochar. He's a senior partner with JHS and Associates, a qualified chartered accountant and certified internal auditor. Mr. Kochar brings 30 plus years of rich experience serving diverse industry sectors, and he holds the position of Chief Advisor of IIA India, is a board member in multiple companies in India and US, also chairs the Audit and Risk Management Committee as independent directors in various companies. Welcome, Nikhil sir, and I request you to enlighten the participant with your words of wisdom, citing examples from your rich and diverse experience.
Thank you so much for your kind words. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for your kind words.
Yeah, Nikhil sir, you are audible.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chief guest and old friend, Mr. Anil Bhandari, who never looks old. He always looks young. My new friend, Mr. Avinash Gupta, guest of honor today, and all my friends from IIA, TK, Sid, Sumant, Deepak Wadhawan, Yukti, and of course, all the participants today from NIRC as well as, from IIA. I do hope, I have a small slideshow. I hope it's visible to everyone. Sid, is my slideshow visible? Okay, thank you, Anil. So what I'm now going to do is just going to be talking a little bit, since this is May Awareness Month. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how all of us who are involved with the internal audit profession, it really doesn't matter which institute we are a member of. I fortunately happen to be a member of both institutes, Institute of Chartered Accountants as well as Institute of Internal Auditors. But how can we add to the awareness initiatives as far as our profession of internal audit is concerned, is going to be what I'm going to be spending the next 5 to 7 minutes on. I'm going to be talking a little bit about IIA's mission and goals. How can we add value to the board and audit committee as internal auditors? Key advocacy messages which all of us as internal auditors can propagate, as well as some of the initiatives which we are taking in this particular regard. As far as IIA India's mission, goals, and objectives is concerned, and I think this is applicable to all of us professionals in internal audit, is to enhance and protect organizational value by providing risk-based and objective assurance, advice, and insight. I have highlighted the words which today I think need more emphasis, and we do this by creating a stronger profession so that we can effectively engage with our stakeholders, more competent professionals. Anilji spoke about the need for the knowledge of business of our clients and organizations we work with. Are we competent to deliver on stakeholder expectations, and how we can deliver value in a sustainable manner? I think this would lead to success for the internal audit profession as a whole. If you look at it today, the internal auditor skills in risk management and the perspectives, the knowledge of the business, which Anil was talking about, are a hugely valuable resource for corporate governance. And more boards, especially the emancipated boards of mature companies, are relying on internal auditors for advice, for insight, for risk assessments, for the ability to see what is likely to emerge as a potential risk. As Anilji spoke about, he says identity risk is something which could be something which is there in the future. I remember many years ago, he used to tell us, what happens if you wake up in the morning and you find that your balances are zero in all your bank accounts? And today we are seeing all this as a reality. I think Anil becomes such a solid professional because he can see into the future. I'm sure all of you will also be solid professionals if we can start adding more value to our organizations we work with, regardless of whether they are our employers or they are our clients, in terms of what are the emerging risks as far as the landscape is concerned. Are we looking at emerging technologies, as Anilji was just talking about? Are we looking at detecting and deterring fraud, analyzing the effectiveness of policies, as well as figuring out how to not only save, but create opportunities to enhance shareholders' wealth? So when it comes to adding value across the board, there is no better resource than the internal auditor. What I would like all of you as internal audit professionals to consider is, are we advocating this message strongly enough? We may know it within our own fraternity, within our own community, but we also have to advocate this message to all the people we work with. One of the key, I would say, decision makers and influencers for the internal audit community is the audit committee. Are we looking at periodic surveys to determine what are the specific needs from this critical stakeholder within the organization? Do we have periodic one-to-one meetings with the audit committee chair and committee members, in addition to the normal audit committee meetings which take place? We do advocate in our standards that these meetings should be held on a one-to-one basis, and it need not be once in a year, it should be a lot more often. But you need to build up that trust, you need to have that kind of a relationship. Do we have a plan to address key risk and governance issues? Yesterday, we had an amazing program on ethics, culture, and internal audit challenges, where we had people from board members like Shailesh Bhai, Sailesh Haribhakti, Dr. Vineshil Gautam, Inderpreet, who's the General Counsel of Infosys, talk to us about how culture and how ethics in an organization can impact an organization, can impact stakeholder wealth, and what can internal audit do in order to provide more value in these particular areas. So can we look at a corporate governance program? Can we look at these areas in order to ensure that the culture and the ethics within organizations are better, and we work as the eyes and ears of the board and the audit committee to make them more aware of any potential risks in this area? These preventive actions can save us a lot more money than you have to. I mean, as Anil was speaking about ransomware, if you can prevent a ransomware, I think it's a no-brainer that it's going to be a lot cheaper than having to submit to a ransom and regret it for the rest of your life. I think these are the three key advocacy messages which we should be looking at propagating. One is that internal audit makes organizations stronger, and it should be well aligned with the organizational strategy. The second is that the standards which we have provide the foundation for high quality audits that help us to provide more reliable information, insights, and analyses to the boards. How do we measure this quality? How do we measure what value we as internal auditors are adding? I think having answers to these questions will make us stronger and more proficient as professionals. And if we adhere to the standards, then it will help us if we are CIAs, if we are certified internal auditors, Mr. TK mentioned that you can, with sitting for the challenge exam, become a CIA. It would help you to become, because I also want to emphasize one point, that the IIA standards are only 20 pages and they are easily downloadable for all members. Please do go ahead and read them. It will make you definitely stronger as an internal audit professional. Just to give you an idea, these are the multiple publications which we come out with, which I think would be useful to all of us. Data analytics, artificial intelligence, risk in the year 2021, our second publication, which talks about the different perspectives of the audit committee, the board, the management, and the internal auditors. Three different sides of perspective, which surprisingly can change within the same organization. So understanding what is the difference in this perception can really make a huge difference. Similarly, how do we respond disruptive innovation? How do we respond to fraud? I mean, there are a huge range. I just wanted to show you a small pictorial depiction of these. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute delight to have this joint program with the NIRC, and I certainly do look forward to many, many more such programs as Avinash ji has just promised to us. And I will now stop sharing my screen so that someone else can become the presenter. Chanchal, you can please make, should I make Yukti the presenter or someone else now? Chanchal, if you can do the need. Thank you so much.
I'll just keep sir. Thank you so much, Nikhil sir, for sharing us about our esteemed institute, the Institute of Internal Auditors. I think it has been, you have a rich experience in the profession as well as with the institute. And thanks again for enlightening us for this information. I would also like to thank, because as I can see more than 300 plus participants, and I would like to thank the president of the 4 audit clubs that we have as part of the Institute of Internal Auditors Delhi chapter. So we've got for Lucknow, which is representing Uttar Pradesh, Mohit Gupta as the president and the executive committee. I thank Mohit, the president, and the executive committee members. For Jaipur, I thank Sana and the executive committee of the Jaipur Audit Club. For Ludhiana, which is covering Punjab, I thank Sameer Mittal, president, as well as the executive committee of Ludhiana. I thank Mr. Sumit Bahadur, president of Bhilai Audit Club, and the entire executive committee for making this, for supporting this particular event and making it a success. Can I now request Mr. Deepak Vadhavan? Deepak sir, he's the member of the Global Advocacy Committee and also the former CEO of IA India. So can I request that please share a few words with all the participants?
Thank you, Sid. It's a pleasure to be in the joint forum of NIRC and IA Delhi. And I say NIRC first because both of them are my home professional bodies. And I became a chartered accountant first. So, but of course, I now am closely associated with the Institute of Internal Auditors. And it's a pleasure to see my old friends and whom I've grown up with, Nikhil, Tyagarajan, Sumant, I don't see him, but he was here. Sid, of course, Amit, Yukti, and also to hear Anil ji and Avinash ji. It's a pleasure. I feel reconnected back with my young days as a chartered accountant and with NIRC. So, so the topic which I'm going to talk today is because May is the International Internal Audit Awareness Month, where the IIA and its affiliate institutes around the world are promoting internal audit awareness programs and advocating internal audit. There is an expectation that an internal auditor in his individual capacity will also do advocacy activities. But I like to keep things simple, and I always wonder that it should make at least business sense to us to do so. It should make career sense. And I have been looking at this one aspect, and it comes out that it makes a lot of career sense to do so. And I've worked out on a couple of principles that that would help us be very clear on creating awareness of internal audit and doing its advocacy. So the first principle is, I'm looking at it purely from a business perspective, is that as part of our career strategy, so we all have career strategies, it makes sense to increase awareness and visibility of our work in our organization. People should know about us. If they don't know about us, then obviously, like, we may not be doing that well in growing our career. It's not a great strategy. It's not a great career strategy if people don't know what we do and what they can expect from us. So sure, it makes a lot of sense to create awareness. Now, any service, whether provided by an external service provider or done through an internal department, needs an appropriate brand positioning, its brand value recognized, and brand visibility maintained. And that is irrespective of the service. So whether you are providing IT services or legal services, you're going to get paid really based on what the buyer is thinking about your brand. And you're going to be given that much of face time, depends on what they think about us as a brand. So we should contribute to that. And this is equally true for the internal audit services. So let's take a litmus test. Let's take a couple of opposite situations. And we've all experienced that. We've all been through an audit field visit where information was free flowing and the auditee staff were totally cooperative. We have benefited from the audit in charge and the chief internal auditor, who's well respected and networked within the departmental heads. And because of him or her, the audit visit went smooth. Also, at some stage of our career, we have experienced the other side too, where it is tough to ask questions to the auditee. Information is given at the last minute, and we are literally relegated to backroom auditors meant to sit in a corner with our laptops and not make information requests. We kind of, it's a struggle actually to communicate. So in the first case, the internal audit brand has worked to improve our work performance, while in the second case, it has been an impediment, thereby impacting our quality of work. Don't you think so? Our efficiency really depends on the auditee, and that is fairly linked as to what he sees is the value going to get from us. And so there's a little bit of brand positioning. So it makes good sense to have appropriate internal audit branding so as to enable you to perform effectively. And to do that, creating regular audit awareness and advocacy is the only way. So that's the first principle. Look at, does it make career sense to do this? The second principle is, which of course I talks a lot about, is how do you do advocacy? It says you start with having pride in your profession, explaining the value proposition, demonstrating value addition and visibility of internal auditors, and that is what they call as advocacy. So it's how do we install pride in our profession? The awareness is delivered through advocacy of internal audit. That's the only way. And I describes advocacy as installing pride in the profession. So advocacy encourages change. It talks about you should encourage change when you're doing advocacy. You should work on building relationships with the organization and the stakeholders. You need to identify who are the stakeholders. So in this 1 month, you're actually busy looking at who are the stakeholders, where is the value proposition, how can we add value to them, and then creating a conversation where they participate. That is advocacy, and it's all nice to talk about services, but actually value is a verb. It's not a noun that you can just talk about it. It's not an adjective to say, oh, I do a great job, or it has to be felt. There has to be an experience about it. So when you're doing advocacy, and I call that smart advocacy, we have smart goals nowadays. We've got this big word which is measurable. So we know about smart goals, smart objectives. So the way to move advocacy is to do smart advocacy. And let's take a couple of examples of smart advocacy. So there is this institute, one of our affiliates in Singapore, IIA Singapore. what this institute's just done for this month, in fact, they've been doing it since January, is to open an advocacy clinic for NGOs. So it's an example of demonstrating a value proposition by internal audit. What happens is that in IIS Singapore, through its members and volunteers, it is conducting a monthly walk-in consultation service to assist charities on questions relating to internal controls, risk management, and internal audit. What they do is this online form, very simple, everything is online today. They go and book a time slot, the charities, they frame the questions regarding risk, control, and internal audit, not financial statements, and certain parts of governance. So they have got a governance code for charities in Singapore. If they have questions regarding that, based on this, IIS Singapore passes it on to its advocacy clinic. They look into the aspects, they are volunteers, and they come up with some suggestions, and basically that's a lot of value for NGOs. So they have created an advocacy clinic. It is meaningful for the people who actually take advantage of this clinic, and also it's a good talking point to show a demonstrable result. So advocacy then has to be a verb. It has to be linked with activity. It has to be measurable. It's got to be smart. We're smart people, aren't we? So let's do it smartly. And that's the first part. The second part is, so do something, make it feel. After all, we've got this, we Indians have this fundamental philosophy of seva. So advocacy has to be a seva. It should not be talk, really. This is the first point which I find from my Indianness that we should be doing. And then I've seen it happening globally. The second part is that explaining what is and what is not the value proposition of internal audit. See, when we've all faced situations when the big boss, the CEO, the MD gives a call and says, hey, look at this, but it's really a cost reduction and it's a cost reduction exercise. He's getting value for that. Sure, you can help him, but then you're helping him not as an internal auditor, you're helping him as a management accountant. If you do not bring your value proposition, there's confusion. So if you put on a hat of a management accountant, so be it. Explain it to the concerned decision maker, I'm working as a management accountant. But as an internal auditor, I have a value proposition, and that should be very clear. My value proposition is 3 words: objectivity, objective. Then how do I deliver it? It is through assurance, and then later on the assurance, a lot of experience, I get insight. So my value proposition is just 3 words: objective, assurance, and insight. And it is in only 3 domains: governance, risk management, and control. We have a lot of peripheral knowledge. Corporates, our clients must take use of it. But our core strength is essentially to enhance, the organizational value and to protect it. And the only way we can do it, and the only way anybody can do it, is what we just talked about: objective, assurance, and insight on GRC, governance, risk, and control. In today's time, you don't have to go far in the importance of protecting your organization. And there are a lot of examples to talk about it. It comes in the paper every day. So we've got major catastrophic public risks. It is of a catastrophic impact is happening to human lives. These are very useful lessons for us internal auditors to understand that, after all, public risk also has a public organization, whatever name you may call it. And a public organization also has public auditors and public internal auditors. So here a value proposition of an internal auditor could have been to do a preparedness review. I'm sure they would be doing it, but probably so basically we've got tools with us to decrease our risk. And today, protection, value protection is the key. And there's so many examples to prove it. So you need to just discuss this during advocacy as to, well, if this has happened, so like, you know, this preparedness review would happen, things would have moved forward. I don't have much else to add, but I'd love to take any questions if you have. Thank you.
So Deepak sir, thanks a lot. I think how I look at this is that a human body can stand straight if the backbone is strong. And somewhere I think you've messaged to all the participants, to all of us, that you need to have a strong backbone. So if you want to talk about internal audit as a profession, what we are doing in our day-to-day lives as our bread and butter is to do the smart way, not the hard way. Give an assurance to the stakeholders, be insightful in the work. How do you position the work that you do, the profession, in a way that that the stakeholders actually look up to? So thanks for sharing that perspective. And I will say from global, let's move to local. So we have Mr. Sumant Chadha, the managing partner of TR Chadha and Company. He is the past president of IA India. He's the chairperson of the advocacy committee of IA India, and he's been wearing a lot of other hats. I don't want to steal and eat a lot of time there because we have a couple of more sessions to be taken. But before that, Sumant sir, over to you.
Thank you, Sid. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're audible, sir.
Yeah, so we have a small discussion on IIA, a trusted partner in your professional journey. So this is about your personal journey. And a very good evening to my colleagues, professional brothers and sisters. Because we all know internal audit makes organizations stronger. Properly positioned internal audit functions that are independent, well-resourced and aligned with the organization's strategy make for effective internal audits. And let me tell you that internal audit and IIA at its standards provide the very foundation for high quality internal audits that helps to ensure the complete, accurate and reliable information which is reported to the board and to the management. So how is IIA a trusted partner in your professional journey? For this, we need to address just two key questions. The first question could be primarily linked to, does IIA help enhance the quality of internal audit? And the second, which is linked to each one of you individually, is, does IIA add value to you as a professional in your journey to become an outstanding internal auditor? So let me briefly discuss and address these questions one by one. The first is a simpler one, where does IIA help enhance the quality of internal audit? Yes, yes, and yes. My 35 years post-qualification as a chartered accountant experience, I can with deepest sense of conviction state that the quality of internal audit is inexorably tied with the IIA global standards, which are recognized, and other professional practice guidance which come out of them, and its premier certification programs. There's no doubt about that. They provide the foundation for high quality internal audits that help ensure that complete, accurate and reliable information is reported to the board and the management. Further, the certified internal auditors, we have the challenge exam going at present in India, are much better equipped to deliver these high quality audits in accordance with these standards. And let me add, a qualified chartered accountant to do a CI certification will be like Sone Pe Suhaga. It cannot be better. IIA is constantly helping to ensure that internal auditing is at the governance table and is acknowledged as a cornerstone for effective governance. IIA, as we speak, is researching, disseminating and promoting and helping us get the knowledge concerning internal audit and its best practices as to look into the future and not only to cater to the present. And more so, now let me come to the second question, which is actually my favorite. Does IIA add value to you individually as a professional in your own journey to become an outstanding internal auditor? Whether you are a practitioner or whether you are part of a CAE or a CAE or aspiring to be one. Because we understand IIA with its many facets help to foster a value-based culture by walking the talk and demonstrating principles-based leadership in all we do. It delivers value as a trusted partner through a sustainable operating model, which my colleagues Nikhil and Deepak spoke about, with nearly 200,000 plus members spread over nearly 200 plus countries and territories and 100 plus international affiliates. So they permeate everywhere. But where is it for me that it helps me to become a trusted advisor? Does II help me do that? What am I looking at? How I can become an outstanding internal auditor? How I can move beyond these technical skills? How to be the trusted advisor? First of all, we need to gain trust. Shouldn't those we audit trust that we understand the business, as Anil very correctly pointed out, and will not simply be wasting their time over the course of the audit? So what are the key attributes which helped me in this journey and which is all promulgated by IIA? Because we understand some of these attributes, in fact, most of them are not inclusive to internal audit. They apply to business leaders in any field. They are basically on the personal side, relationship side, and of course the professional side, which we all understand. So on the personal side, for example, let's talk about a few of the key ones, like ethics, ethical resilience. Am I able to inculcate a mindset of ethical resilience? Am I there to see that my integrity is intact? I am full of courage. My DNA is full of honesty and accountability. And lastly, but not the least, am I trustworthy? Moving forward, am I result focused? Because it's very simple in internal audit, quarter after quarter, area after area, we bring out reports and can generate very nice PPTs and presentations, and there are various dashboard tools available to showcase that. But what happens after the report is delivered? Did my audit have an impact? Did it create productive and beneficial change in that organization? Did it identify opportunities for improvement? I should purely look for outcome versus the output. Output is the number of pages or number of red risk, high risk areas I have earmarked in my report or in my presentation. But what is the actual outcome? What is the quality over quantity? Because the end result is not the report, my friends. It is making things better for the good of the client. And I will handhold them till I am 100% sure that they have been convinced of my recommendations, they have implemented it rightly, and because of that implementation, they have benefited in some way or the other. As I go forward, I realize that, to be a good internal auditor or any professional, we've always heard of IQ and of course EQ. But have we looked at the CQ, the curiosity quotient? As an auditor and an internal auditor more so, it's my DNA. What do I understand by intellectually curious? Here I need to be very clear how I interplay the 5 C's which are well established in the internal audit setup. The 5 C's of criteria, the condition, the cause, consequences, which is effect, and corrective actions and plans and recommendations. So unless I go for the why, I go to the root cause, which is actually helping me to make meaningful recommendations, it will become a perfunctory exercise only to give output, but not quality. So I have to be very, very vigilant of being curious. That's the skill set I have to develop. Moving forward, I'm only taking few of the ones which are, which I feel are personal to me. Open-mindedness. This is something very important. Some people have it from day one. Some people have to develop over a period of time. But the good news is everybody can have it. Because few things I know I should not do. One, I should not dwell on the past. What was my experience last time? The auditee or the process owner didn't give me any importance. I didn't get the data, or there were so many high risk area in this issue, or something else which the audit committee had pointed out. No legacy, sir. No legacy, friends. Go with an open mind. Also, I don't want to shrink from getting to the bottom of the issue. I should have the courage and the conviction to get to the bottom of the issue. I should not be scuttled in my activity or in my endeavor to find out the actual root cause, in spite of the limitations or the pressures they may be applied on the internal audit by anybody from the stakeholders. Similarly, I can't make or cannot make any myopic view in making recommendations. I have to see a 360-degree perspective. I have to be very clear how the process owner is going to review this, how as a businessman or as a professional in that organization is able to see the recommendation and walk the talk. Then I cannot neglect the inputs which are coming forth from the auditee. This is linked to the earlier point. I have to keep that in perspective because I cannot view the world in black and white. There are shades which I have to be working with and I have to develop over a period of time. Because ultimately success will depend on building and fostering and maintaining good relationships. Without that, internal audit cannot succeed. I have to be a dynamic communicator. That's the next important thing. And what do I mean by communication? I have to be a good listener. And listening, my friends, is different from hearing, because hearing is you get something, you go out. But if I'm able to listen, my response will be much more effective because it will help me consequently earn trust. And then whatever I'm doing, it will help me to be much more effective. Similarly, integral to success is my relationship with my colleagues, my juniors, my seniors, with my clients. And for that, I need to have a few key characteristics: a positive intent, a diplomacy, a trustworthiness, which I talked about, leadership skills, empathy, which is very important. And what I need to be an inspiring leader is what will differentiate me from somebody who holds a leadership role. I have to be an inspiring leader. I'll have to drip with charisma and always have a mindset with rethink and reframe mode. II helps us with all these activities. It helps us to be intellectually curious, be alert, have a sense of humor. All these are mentioned by Richard Chamber, who is the CEO and the president who just demitted office. All of this is from his book, Trusted Advisors, based on his experience of II for nearly 30-40 years. Ultimately, being result focused, and how I can ultimately lastly convert my thoughts into action is by sharing my experience, let others lead, coach and train your team to greatness, build teams and promote teamwork, employ purposeful emotion, leading through culture, which, yesterday there was a phenomenal program on that, and ultimately how to face challenges, because that's where the asset test would be, because without that, it would be impossible to earn and extend trust. So friends, it is a holistic approach, and without that, I cannot be a good internal auditor. And II takes your hand and leads you all the way through this and much more. Thank you, and back to Sid. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sumant sir. As you have shared a perspective, I think it has made me reflect on some of my thoughts which I've always carried. Knowledge is something that can be acquired. Knowledge is something that can be created. But it's the human traits which make a lot of difference. And you mentioned about being trustworthy, being ethical, integrity, having high integrity, positivity, some other traits like being empathetic, honesty. I think it actually is to do a lot which creates some sort of a culture in the environment where we work. I think very well informed to all the participants. Thank you very much, Sumant sir. And before I introduce Yukti, so we are now waiting for the heartthrob session on cybersecurity audit. Yukti has a rich experience. I know she's been with SS Kothari earlier and then with Deloitte. In fact, we were together in Deloitte at some point of time. And now she's a co-founder of Omnia Consulting Services, and in and out giving a lot of seminars, workshops on cyber security, on ITGC, IT journal controls. So Yukti, over to you. I know you've been waiting for a long time. I don't want to steal more time now. So please enthrall us with your words of wisdom. Yukti, over to you. You want to share the screen? You can do that as well.
so much.
You're on mute, Yukti, I
Thank
believe.
you. Yeah, thank you so much, Sid. And thank you, Deepak sir and Suman sir. I'll share my screen. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is the PPT visible?
It is, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much for confirming that. So,
Yukti, you can make it in the full screen mode. That's it. Otherwise, it's visible. Yeah. Yeah, perfect.
okay. Thank you so much. So today we are going to discuss the topic of cyber security. The agenda what we have for today is why we need to have this cyber security as a part of our internal audit plan. Some of the aspects of doing risk assessment for cyber security for our engagement planning, some illustrative risk and controls and reporting with root cause analysis on cyber security. So this is what we intend to cover in next 45 minutes, and last 10 minutes we can have discussion on the questions if any. So going straight to the topic, nowadays how the business is being done is all of us are aware we are working from home, and every business process, typically whether it is financial or purchasing or HR, inventory, every aspects of business is being done in a digital way. And when everything is being done in a digital way, obviously it has to be a connected business. It has to be connected to technology. It has to be connected to people. It has to be connected to devices. It has to be connected to data, and every aspects of communication. When it happens in digital world, it has to be over an internet. And then when we are over the internet, obviously we are not only connected to our organization, but we are connected to the larger thing, because we are not in the boundaries or parameters of our organization. We are open in the cyber world, or what we call as an internet world. And every business process is actually being done not only nowadays within the organization, but in close coordination with various business stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, it doesn't only mean my supplier or customer, it means a large number of society where we interact and we get the information from, and we prepare our insights, and based on those insights we try to have some foresights and take our decision and bring the business process there. So every aspect is being done digitally, and when everything is being connected and done digitally, then it brings us a new risk, and which is a cyber risk. And cyber risk, as Anil also mentioned, it is all around. As we see, it is in each and every business process. Nowadays, companies are talking about digital transformation. Every company is working on that journey. Entire supply chain is getting connected. And when the supply chain is getting connected, then obviously there are risks which are coming from the supplier systems. And the supply chain connectivity brings, because we connect to those systems to directly place our orders, we connect to the systems to directly get the information, we connect these systems to get the informations of their various billing, delivery, and every aspect of it. And when we are connecting and we are interacting in a collaborative manner, obviously it brings the risk which is not only within the organization, but it brings the risk which comes because of the cyber standards which are there at my other vendor end. And these vendors also may be having some other vendors with whom they were taking some services or using a technology on. And lastly, we see people operating on cloud in the current environment. So all these things bring a new risk which is on the cyber side. Have we considered those risks? Is a question which each one of us need to think of. Even with this cyber thing coming into existence is now in our plant operations, even our manufacturing things, we have moving to the journey of industry 4.0, where what is happening is because of this COVID situations, people are taking a leap and bound progress in this thing and wanting to get everything in a integrated manner on the click of a button. And for that purpose, they are implementing things like sensors. They are putting various robotics things on the plant operations, and also integrating based on augmented reality into the workflow, where decisions are also sometimes taken by these systems itself. That means the system defines where there is a requirement of a maintenance and take that call, and accordingly the operations are diverted to the other machine, and then the machine, it goes for self-healing, or it is under maintenance, and when it gets maintained, then this plant again, this machine all takes up the job. Now all these things brings a aspect of a risk which comes where my sensors probably could be used or hacked and giving a wrong message, and as a result my production having an impact. Or it could be a situation where my robotic or the PMS systems, which are my OT systems, they are taken control of, and suddenly the plant is made to shut. And we have seen such type of examples happening. A lot of organizations which are using OT technologies in past have faced that. And with the thing wherein we are working in the current environment, where these OTs were very much limited to the plants, now they are being connected to the IT systems as well. And when they are getting connected to the IT systems over a net, obviously the new risk which is emerging is a cyber risk. And also the risk is emerging because there is a huge usage of sensors which are there, and these sensors can sometimes be an active sensor and sometimes they could be a passive sensors. So they also bring those types of threats in the organization. Then another area where we see a huge impact is on the customer support, because every type of the solutions which are being sold, people are looking to provide a great customer experience. And when they intend to provide a great customer experience, and the only way to do is by remaining connected, by sharing the information, providing and taking the data, and providing solutions which are automated through a bot or some type of things. And when the intention is to do that, in that case also what happens is that we are connecting and we are sharing information over an internet, and there is a risk that the data of there can get leaked, or we get somehow some information which is and respond in a way which is not there, or the chatbot which we have deployed to provide a solution, somebody changes the things and the response we give to the customer is not as per the requirement of the business. So that's another risk which comes because of the thing. Innovation. The whole innovation currently is happening on the digital, of thinking of how we can digitize. Imagine a cyber incident happening. What it can result is, actually it can take the company a huge backward steps. Because why? Because there is a risk which has happened, and there's a loss of trust and brand which may occur because of the same. So any innovation, anything which you have to do over a digital thing, it has to have the element of assessment on the cyber side of it. Otherwise, you may not respond adequately to the proof of concept, and then when the system is implemented, the risk remains an open risk to be exploited once the systems are live. Currently, many of our business processes are being done from home. We are connecting our through VPNs, our ERP systems. We are also sometimes, because there is no digital boundaries now. People are digitally as physically actually in home doing all sorts of activities. At one point of time they are doing the work, and at the point of time they may be doing some things within related to home, or they may be taking care of some activities at home. The time boundaries have actually gone. It could happen if your VPN is not secured and the access is open, that the confidential information within the home is shared. It could happen that the webcam which is kept open could result in sharing of the information which is not required. It could happen that in the VPN, when we are connecting, at parallelly, if we have an access to Google or to Yahoo or these types of browsers where we are doing our transactions, we may bring a new risk to our corporate infrastructure. And because the ERPs, which were earlier in a very much secured way, could be accessed through only the office boundaries, now they are accessible through the homes. So there's a new risk because of the same which arises as a result of the same. So these cyber risk consideration, when they are there, then it requires a detailed level of understanding and assessment, so as to come into the level of the discussions with the audit committee on this thing. There's few questions. First of all, we all need to think and answer on that. Do we think that in the current environment cyber risk impact is high? And obviously, I believe most of you would answer yes, because we are seeing that impact. We are seeing every day incident of cyber, and the impact of which is very high. As we saw in some of the cases, it is not only in India, but globally across these high impact incidents are happening, where data, which is a key element, is getting stolen and being and which is said to be the new oil, is being actually shared across. And when the data is being shared, obviously people can use it in different way based on the way it can be an advantages to them. So the threat is high, and so is the impact, and so is the likelihood, because we have seen earlier there were lesser incident, but now we are, over the last few years, we have seen a huge amount of cyber attacks being there. And to give you a statistic, around 70% increase has happened since 2020 to 2021 on this cyber attack in India alone. And every day, even we are getting a lot of phishing mails. There are false informations which are coming, false phishing details are coming, wherein they are saying contribute to this trust, or you contribute to this fund, or the SOS support websites are being created, false websites are there. Even the government websites, hospital websites, banks websites, all of them are getting replicated, duplicated, and being shown. So these things are increasing, and they are bound to increase more. So it's not anymore a thought that is the cyber risk real, or is the cyber risk really a high impact one, or is it something to be just ignored at this point of time. And this is very much evident from some of the breaches, as I mentioned, as in case of Air India, Domino's, MobiKwik, and Facebook, where we have seen across all these things, one thing was common. What was stolen was the data, and what was sold was the data. And more interestingly, what insight actually can be seen is that none of these incidents the organization reported on its own. So they got to know, not from inside, but they got to know from outside. And those incidents and the things came through a Twitter, which is a social media platform. And it results in a larger breach of trust, because when something is being done internally, identified internally, dealt with internally, and communicated first internally, it builds a larger amount of thing that the processes and controls are working effectively. But in each one of these cases, it was a response to the incident, and that to a huge cyber incident. And it is not that these organizations do not have a good systems. It is not like that. It is because of the fact that the type of incidents, the type of attacks, the type of variations, the type of things are rising, and therefore most of the organizations now are talking about zero trust architecture, wherein you don't trust any device, any person, any connectivity, any network, and you just start building everything from a scratch as a zero, and having absolutely no trust, checking whether it is required, and every time questioning that why do you need these things, and doing with almost negligible to minimal type of access. And this is a study which is from World Economic Forum 2021, and on the risk and the likelihood, if you see that the cyber failure, security failure on risk likelihood is one of the highest, and the impacts by impact, even the IT infrastructure breakdown is one of the highest, and that's what the cyber security does, wherein they take hold of the systems, and then they put a malware, and based on those malwares, the various types of ransomware attacks are built, and the systems are not available. I mean, the response of the organization ultimately has to be to go back to their backup and restore those backups. Sometimes backups also are not available, or they are dated, or they may not be available for all the system. And as a result, the by impact, it becomes all the more high. Besides getting lost in terms of data, they also face loss in terms of reputation and trust, which they have built over so many years. So some questions which we need to actually think about and answer is the cyber risk part of my board agenda? And obviously, the answer to this should be yes. Why I'm saying yes? Because even the board meetings are happening in a digital way. Every discussion is happening in a digital way. And these meetings are pretty sensitive in meetings. And if some people get access to the data, the information which is being discussed in the board meetings, obviously it is a huge risk. And besides the risk, which obviously is to the data which resides in the organization. So definitely it should be part of the board agenda, but sadly the surveys tell that still a lot of boards have to bring this to their agenda. Do we consider ERM? Do our ERM consider cyber risk? So I did quick research on the various organizations' annual returns, and what I found was that it is only in 25 to 30% of cases the organizations have taken cyber risk as one of the key risks. So a lot needs to be thought of, because if we are working from home, definitely this is a new risk which has to be taken into consideration. Another important question is that in our risk universe, do we have the cyber risk? Do we have it in our internal audit risk universe? Many a times, obviously, we do have IT risk. We call it by different name, but cyber risk is something beyond the IT risk, which is on the various other elements. It talks about actually loss of data through an attack, or system being not available, or my information being manipulated. So these types of things we need to think of and make sure that we have it in our risk universe. Another important question is, do we have this in our internal audit plan? Many people don't have this in the internal audit plan. it should be part of internal audit plan. The reason I'm saying is because as I discussed previously, cyber is everywhere. It is in every aspect of work which is being done in the organization. So it's an important element, whether we are doing a process audit of finance, or we are doing a process audit of procurement, or we are doing an audit of HR, or we are doing any business area. Obviously, these transactions and all are getting recorded and being processed through over an internet, and then they are getting stored in the digital platforms. And many a time these digital platforms are on the cloud platforms, and these cloud platforms are connected over internet. And these things brings a newer risk, which is on the third-party risk and the cloud risk, and the most importantly within that the cyber risk. Another question which we need to think of is, who is the owner of cyber risk? Many people believe that probably it is the IT team who is the person who is responsible for the cyber risk. But that's not correct in the current world. It is the responsibility of each and every process owner, because each and every process owner, while they are designing the process, they need to look at where the risk is. And one of the most important risks also nowadays is protection of data. And this data which is to be protected is within the cyber world. So definitely this risk has to be there. They should study the data flow diagrams, understand how the data is in which system, which processes, how it's being transferred, how it is being processed, and how it is being interfaced with various applications, and as a result generating the output. Entire flow of information should be studied. Also, one needs to understand, because privacy has become one of the very, very important things, because it directly relates to creating the trust in the organization. So understanding that if there is some information which is very sensitive or PII, that needs to be clearly identified and protected. Another question which we need to look at is that, do we have some standardized approach to cyber risk, or do we have some bespoke customization that makes a solution unique? See, every organization and every process nowadays is being operated in a different landscape. There are a lot of silos which gets created within the technology platform itself. For instance, HR could be outsourced and a different application could be used for HR purposes. My order to cash, the process of my marketing, the process of my way of reaching customers, providing them various support and giving them customer experiences could be in some of my customized application, and it could be with the third-party service provider. And so one way of protecting the cyber thing by doing a risk assessment, identifying assets within the thing, implementing encryption, making sure we have password protected, making sure that we have those antivirus updated, and also making the regular reviews on the access side and putting patches may not fit to every sort of processes or every type of thing. You may have to look at it in a different perspective, seeing that which risks are within the organization, which risks are moving out of the organization, what technologies are there, how the interfaces are being generated, how the information is flowing from the external systems to the internal systems, what are the cyber checks we have on the ingress and egress on the network side, and what types of checks we have when we get the information within our network and then upload it in a key ERP system. So these things need a different level of understanding and thinking. So one standardized approach, one standard way of looking at it is not the right way to do it. Another question which we have to also ask is on the skill set. Do we have the skills available with us on the cyber risk side so that we could audit it? And I must say, each and every internal auditor do have that skill. It is a matter of both mindset as well as making sure that the people get little amount of training on the cyber side, also as far as applying that knowledge of business process to the IT risk is concerned. So upscaling is the thing which needs to be thought of, and what is more important is to understand the business and the data flow. If that is known, if the risk is known, and if we know what could go wrong if the information is breached or the data is breached, then obviously we will know that what types of risk control which we require to prepare and plan, and principally converting them into a technical things with the help of discussions and collaborations with the IT team members, and then bringing up a risk program matrix and doing that type of audit. Maybe some cross skills could be used in case it is required. Co-sourcing could be thought of, outsourcing could be thought of. Now we come to another very important aspects of cyber things. So once we know that it's a very important to have cyber security as a part of our audit universe, audit plan, and we know that it is very important element to be included in the and being done from a risk assessment, because the likelihood as well as the impact is very high. Then the next question comes is, what are the areas we need to look at, and what are some risk and controls which we should be looking at? So if you look at and try to understand that current day the threats which are coming are both from internal as well as external, and largely till 2019 they were mostly insider threats which were coming, but gradually as the organizations are moving on the digital world, on the cyber world, and they are getting connected to a lot of third-party systems and to various types of moving their journey ahead and having those cloud environment, a newer risk which are or newer areas from where the threats are coming is the third-party service provider. And many of them, specifically for the large organizations, sometimes people say that it could be a state attack also, where they try to attack the larger organizations so that they could get a major part of it. And many of it is also coming by way of just to prove certain point of things, capability, or because of the pressures of being there in the market of cyber and showing the skills. That also is something, the reason why these things are there. So we see the common risk sources as of now are sometimes nation states, which have happened in SolarWinds case in US. They are cyber criminals who take pride in actually doing these types of things, and there are a lot of places or websites also where they advertise also, and they say that they could hack any systems or this thing, and then there are hackers who are very active and who try to prove a point. And then obviously there are insiders, organizations. Some people are not aware, some people intentionally also share. So both those types of insiders are there, and then third-party service provider. Many a times risk comes because it's a time of innovation where we want to innovate faster in a better way, and also prove that we are digitally available in the current time. And therefore what we end up is getting a products and services which may not be well tested from a cyber security perspective. They could not be designed wherein the security is taken into the design of it, or the privacy is taken by design of it. And because of these systems, we expose our internal environment and internal systems to the risk. And these are some of the reasons why the risk happens. And typically, most of the risk happens by way of phishing, where the attackers try to get into one person's probably the senior person, and or probably some person who is known to be a system administrator or having a lot of information, and they send a mail, a link or something like that, which appears to be very much true and real. And when the person looks at that and clicks on the link, suddenly they are program runs, and it is they are connected on the VPN. It impacts and goes to the system also. There are large amount of, then it goes to takes the case of web attacks and DOS attack, and then slowly and slowly these systems are these corrupted programs run, and these viruses are there run over a period of time. And nowadays we are seeing these attacks being planned in a way that things do not come up very quickly. There would be something which would be done at one point of time so that nobody identify those types of things, and it looks like a normal transaction. And then they keep on replicating, and slowly the times are planned, and even the cyber attacks which are being planned are typically planned with a project plan of 3 to 6 months. That's how the larger cyber attacks typically get there. So these malwares runs, and then suddenly you find one day that there is a ransomware type of situation where there is a request to pay a certain amount of money, and that's how mostly organizations are facing. Third party risk is a real risk, and many, around 45% of the recent attacks which has happened are because of these third party risks. And they are not necessarily third party risk of vendors, but they are of the connected systems and devices which are installed and which may not be that much cyber secure. Another important thing, as Anilji was also mentioning, was on identity theft, wherein the identity itself is taken away and somebody portrays as you, and then start getting all the information, data, and suddenly the organization faces a larger amount of attack. And then data leakage is, it could be as simple as taking a recording or a photo, or it could be as complex as getting the complete data, which happened in case of Domino's case. So these types of things are there. So what the organizations, or how they can actually deal with it, and what are the areas and the risk and controls which should be considered is an important consideration. And if we can probably look at the most, I have not put many of it, some of them I have bucketed down. So the biggest one is to have a clear cyber security framework. The organization should have a clear strategy, IT strategy, and within that strategy, cyber and the privacy strategy should be an essential element. And these cyber and privacy strategies should be looked by the auditor from an expect that do they cover assessment of each and every systems before any decision is taken. Do they have a architecture which is properly aligned to my existing architecture? Do they have the processes of making sure that there is security by design and privacy by design? Do we have a framework where we try to go for a zero trust architecture, wherein we try to build and have absolutely no trust on any devices, any people, anything, and every time start questioning why do you need an access? And if there is some anomaly, we regularly review it, and based on that, proactively, automatically, the system takes an actions and build those things. So those types of framework, if designed with a proper policies and procedures, which are monitored on a regular basis, they enable the organization to be little cyber secure. Even having these things, because the type of attacks are increasing so much that no organization can at any point of time say that we are totally secured and will not be subject to cyber attack. That's not a thing, but still at least a higher level of confidence can be achieved by putting these cyber framework. Another big thing which internal auditor, I think we all must have experienced if you would have done this IT audit, is that we don't even know what type of assets we have. We don't even understand what type of IT devices we are using, what type, how many sensors, how many mobile devices, how many apps, how many servers, and who is owning them, and what types of softwares we are using, and why we are using it, and when we are using it, and how they are connected. So knowing that and doing that IT asset inventory is another very, very important area. So having that as a part of the audit plan of a cyber thing is an extremely important element, where you list down all these IT assets and you rank them on the impact and the likelihood, and identify your crown jewels. And when you identify your crown jewels, because they have a lot of information, data, and they are really sensitive and important to the organization, then you start putting a better control, a better protection to these types of things. But unless and until you do that exercise, many companies are not aware, and suddenly they find some type of attack happening, and then that being reported by not insider but some outsider. And there is no monitoring which is also happening, because there is no ownership, then obviously there is no person who is responsible, and there is no monitoring which is happening on these types of systems. Yet another important thing is to have a very, very good vendor risk or the third party risk framework. You should have an extremely good process to do a security, cyber security and privacy assessment as a part of any risk assessment or due diligence, as a even for discussing of any products or services you want to take specifically on the on any business side. And those and the clear communication on your expectations of cyber and your expectations on privacy should be communicated through a proper NDA, through a proper contracting, and the effort should be made to at least have the right to audit, so that you can audit and get this thing. Many people do submit a SOC 1 or SOC 2 or these third-party audit reports. But then these audit reports always have a situation where they say that these are, they will cover only the aspects which are with the external service provider. But lot and lot of responsibilities sit inside. That how do we configure the systems? How do we give access to the people? How do we manage and monitor the things? How do we monitor the SLAs? How do we respond to the risk which has come, to the fourth party risk which has come to these types of third party service provider? And what types of monitoring and the knowledge sharing we have? So these needs to be discussed and brought part of an audit scope and covered as a part of a cyber security. Yet another important element to be seen is the API securities, because many devices connect to each other simply by building an API, which is through which you exchange the data. And these API, if they are not secure, then obviously they become a single point of failure. So building a strong baseline around that, having a strong security is another important thing. Then hardening your operating system databases is thing wherein you look at every aspect of it, see who has an access, how the patches are being updated, ensure that antivirus systems are installed, make sure the password adequately identified, there is a multi-factor authentication, there is an end-to-end encryption. So these types of things helps in strengthening the security proposition. Anything which is secure needs to be regularly reviewed and protected and monitored on a regular basis. And therefore, it's essential that there is a regular threat monitoring. The companies are implementing threat models and monitoring, but those threat definitions need to be regularly reviewed, and those monitoring needs to be there. And maybe intelligence needs to be built, because something somewhere which is very known and thing can be given to the system itself, and where really the judgment is required, there is where the SOC operation experts can work on. So building those types of monitoring systems, building those types of SIEMs, wherein there is a regular review of the events, regular review of the problems, and giving a solutions and timely identification of the incident. If a network traffic is suddenly coming from one geography or from one location, or there is a sudden increase over a period of time, All these needs to be reviewed and monitored, or the capacity is getting, which doesn't happen normally, is getting completely choked. It clearly shows that there is somebody who's trying to get into the system. So those monitoring, those reviews need to be part of the scope of internal auditor. Then data protection, it is securing data at rest, data in motion, and data in transit, wherein you build the systems of endpoint security, you build the systems around making sure the encryptions are very much implemented, passwords are there, multi-factor authentications are there, you're connecting over VPNs, and then also layering the data and making it providing it as and when only it is required. And for doing this, the first step is to do a data journey mapping. That means you need to understand that what the data is, where the data is, how the data is stored, how is it moving, and who is responsible at each level, and which systems are being used. If that assessment is properly done, then only you can go to the next step of putting the framework of data protections and implementing those controls based on cyber incident and response and recovery is another element. And then many a times the patches which are not timely updated becomes the source of malware. So those updation of timely patches, looking at those things is another important element to be seen. Then implementation of programs of endpoints is another there. 90% of the internal attacks or the social engineering attacks are because of lack of awareness and training. Many organizations do spend huge amount of money in doing this awareness and training, but awareness and training to be really effective in a nowadays is actually to be simulated and giving them a real life experience wherein they can understand that these types of things can happen, these types of things are actually happening, and then providing them a guidance on how to respond, providing them that if something happens, who to report, when to report, and then taking them through a journey of making sure that every time they are secure is what the cyber awareness training needs to cover up. And then obviously the last important element is identity and access management, which is a core. Access is the point through which you get to the system, and this needs to be truly protected. Only people who require access needs to be there. It is not only people, but also the devices. The devices and the service accounts which gets created, they need to be also given access only on need to know basis, and that too with limited goals and for limited usage. If a tool is deployed for 3 months period of time to do certain activities, after 3 months automatically the tool should be taken out of the system. So access management system should take care of removing the access for those tools, etc., also as a part of it. So I'll not go into the details of risk and controls considering the time we have, and we straight away go into the aspects of cyber audit reporting. And many a times we find cases where they are we find observations like this, that IT assets are not protected, or there is lack of inventory, or we don't know who's the owner of the asset is. There are certain assets which are prepared, which are procured but never used, and there is so it's actually not knowing the ownership and having a right set of tools and systems. So doing a deep analysis and asking only IT person sometimes will not give an answer. We have to go into the core of it and understand that it is not only one part of it. It could be wherein our whole owners which have taken the system, they are not made owners of it, and they are just user of it, and therefore they don't take it as a for a usage, and they are not built because of that, and therefore they don't use it and protect it in the way they intend to be. So we have to look at from that perspective. Many times we find the observation that passwords are not configured. Sometimes the systems could be so old that the passwords cannot be configured because it is something which is very outdated. The technology is some codes are written and the codes and you can't overwrite, and therefore the policies cannot be implemented. there are tools and techniques to deal with it. You can put a top layer over these types of system, but you can provide those recommendations only and only if we go into the details of finding out that why it was not configured. What was the reason why it was not done? Was it the lack of awareness? Was it the reason that the system has certain limitation, or was it the reason that there are probably the policies or processes are outdated and they need to be updated as per the current environment? Again, we see observations like audit log not enabled. Audit log has now been mandated by the Companies Act also going ahead from the next year. So this again is, many people say that this is they have not enabled because of the reason that it takes a lot of space and lot of things. But nowadays, space storage is not a concern because they are available. They could be probably using an outdated technology, so the storage or the data tables could not be properly aligned, or probably the technology or the systems which they are using may not have that type of feature itself. So doing that thing and will help us in giving a right set of recommendations and getting a right set of management response, because it is not only the observation which matters. What matters is actually the action on the observation. Similarly, like VPN not available, probably they won't have invested, or there could be some untrusted systems. They don't want to give that access of VPN and they want it to be siloed out. That could be the reason. So we need to understand these types of things. Unpatched system on SAP environment. There is a process which needs to be followed and all these things. So that could be one of the reasons why the systems are not patched up. And in certain cases, it could be because there is a cycle which they follow to patch up the system. We have to see whether it was assessed critically, whether the reasons were identified that why it is not getting patched at this point of time, and based on that provide our recommendation. Then critical data not protected. Again, over here we need to understand, first of all, do the users have that type of training? Do they have the understanding of asset? Do they know what is critical and what data is important and what data is sensitive? If that thing is not available, obviously these types of things may not be implemented, and it will take a lot of time for the organizations to implement these types of policies and procedure non-compliance. The pace of digitization, the pace of technology has actually taken a thing. So we have to make sure that when we give this observation, go into the details, why it is not compliant. Probably it would have not been updated to take the care. And then many a times we are using third-party system, and we are taking the policies and procedures of other things. So we need to look at it in a comprehensive and holistic manner to give our recommendation. Another critical observations which we often give is access is not as per the business requirement, or segregation of duties not there. Again, for this, the reason could be that the business thing, it is IT, and IT thing, it is a business responsibilities, and they don't understand roles and responsibilities within the system, and that is why it is not getting implemented. So training and awareness is a true issue in this type of thing. Ownership is the issue in this type of thing. Making the process owner the real owner of the application is the issue in this type of thing, and therefore our recommendations should be around that. Antivirus not updated. Again, there could be certain reasons why it could not have been there. We have to go and keep on asking until we get into the core of it. And encryption. Encryption, again, they could be like we have put encryptions on the parameter, not then end-to-end encryptions on data. There would be reasons, there could be interacting applications which could be configured, and we need to understand this thing and then only provide a management response. So the topic is actually cybersecurity is an emerging topic. Every day we are learning in this topic. Every day new approach, new things are coming, and what is best being said is that only way which we can be aware and be protect ourselves is by regularly updating ourselves, regularly getting trainings on it from our organizations, understanding what are do's and don'ts, making sure we patch our systems well, always connect on VPN, have our system encrypted, and always back up. In case something goes wrong, at least we have the data available and we could recover and start our operations. And never share anything to anyone unless and until you trust, and adopt a zero trust culture and attitude wherein you don't, even if it is a mail coming from senior person to share certain information, it could be a phishing things. Always check, always find out. Why? If usually that person doesn't ask, is asking. Check, and then that's how you can do that type of thing. And auditing as an auditor would only happen if we understand the cyber risk, understand the controls, and then start working on getting into the things. That's all from my side. Thank you very much. If we have any questions, we can discuss that. Do we have any questions?
Thank you so much, Yukti. I believe, Amit, you will be picking up questions which are there, if any, and before you give the vote of thanks. Yeah.
So if anybody's got any questions, please feel free to write it on our chat window, please. I've just gotten one feedback and a request by, I think, Yogita on asking more sessions on cybersecurity and risks. So I will definitely plan some more sessions, Yogita, on this.
Surely, Amit, you being chair of the training committee for Delhi chapter, I'm sure in your calendar you're going to feed that as an input.
Definitely. So just a quick request to everyone, if you can just take out a quick minute and just give feedback on whether this webinar met your expectations. There are 3 questions. Before we quickly go to the last agenda of the day, which is the vote of thanks. With this, I'd just like to go with the last agenda of presenting the vote of thanks on behalf of the IIA Delhi chapter. First of all, I'd like to thank the stalwarts, CA Anil Bhandari ji and CA Avinash Gupta ji from ICAI for gracing us on this occasion and sharing their views on cybersecurity and other topics. You know, as TK sir had actually aptly called out at the start of this event, IIA and ICAI are partners in promoting governance around audits. So this, your presence on this will definitely help us, you know, take this forward. In fact, I think Avinash ji very graciously also said that they would like to have more such sessions in the near future. So I'm hoping we'll be able to plan some of these sessions going forward. I'd also like to thank the senior leadership of IIA India, starting with TK sir, Mr. Nikhil Kochar, Mr. Deepak Vadhavan, and Mr. Suman Chadda for taking our time for this session and sharing their views on IIA and how can we advocate the internal audit profession again. Also, I'd like to take this moment to thank the IIA Delhi chapter executive committee team, Mr. Siddeshwar Bhalla, Mr. Saket Mehra, Mr. Bharat Garg, and Mr. Rajiv Puri for helping us organize this session and give it the kind of success we've actually seen. Additionally, a big thanks to Ms. Yukti Arora for enlightening us on this topic of cybersecurity. I think this is a very pertinent topic. This was a very, very insightful session, which all of us should definitely dwell upon, as internal auditors and try to understand the cybersecurity risk better. I look forward to meeting up all our participants in all of our future sessions. And with this, thanks once more from the IIA Delhi chapter. Thank you. Over to you, Sid.
Thank you, everyone.
For any closing
Thanks a lot to Yukti. It should be very useful. I think we should take it forward across the country. The demand for this course is very high. Amit, thanks. Have a great evening and weekend. Thanks a lot.
Thanks to all of you. We close the session now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.